Hi everyone, my name is Reisen. I am the EMEA Sales Manager for Imaris, and it is my pleasure to welcome you today to our fourth Imaris Homeschool webinar series. Please make sure you sign up to our next homeschool webinars as well. Today, we'll focus on Imaris Vantage and how to analyze your data using interactive Vantage plots in Imaris. The agenda will be the following. I will start with an overview of the concept and the different Vantage views. Then I will go into Imaris to give you a live demo and show you Vantage plots on a variety of examples. And I will end with the Annotation Tool, which is also part of the Vantage module, adding text and statistics to objects. During this webinar, please type your questions in the chat box. Imaris team members will be able to answer your questions during the webinar. In the past webinars, we focused on the visualization, detection and analysis of objects. Vantage is towards the end of the Imaris workflow, as it allows the interpretation of the data. You might have seen these graphs on our website, and you were wondering, how can I do this in Imaris? Well, during this webinar, you will learn how to create these graphs, but also how to interpret your data. Vantage is a module that requires the Core and Measurement Pro, and Vantage works with the following modules: Track Lineage, Filament Tracer, Cell, and Batch. You find the Vantage menu on top of the toolbar next to Surpass, and once you click on Vantage, you will have the Vantage 1D view, 2D view, and object view available. The Vantage view provides an interactive way to visualize abstract statistical values by using rendered objects as data points. It allows you to create multi-dimensional plots. It allows you to customize graphs to highlight object relationships. It allows you to compare multiple results by creating combined plots for the various data sets. It enables advanced data exploration. It allows you to create plots linked to the corresponding objects in Surpass view. And finally, it also provides statistical tests to assess differences between distributions. This is only available in Vantage 1D. And this is the view where I start here. It allows splitting values by their labels to facilitate a simple visual comparison. So this makes it very simple to see statistical differences between classes of objects. For example, if you have classified spots as being inside or outside of a surface, you can easily compare any statistics of these two groups in a side-by-side plot in Vantage 1D, like what is displayed here on the right-hand side. You have spot class A and spot class B. You can split the different classes within a compound with this split tool here. And the sequence can be changed with those arrows. The sequence is important for the statistical tests. Vantage 1D provides statistical tests to assess differences between distributions. There are 4 tests which Imaris Vantage can provide to you. You click on the tab and you get directly the tests done by Imaris. Now the sequence, as I said, is important because each object will be compared to the first one. So let's say this is the control, experimental, or in this case, spot type 1, spot type 2, spot type 3. You can compare actually those various objects against always the first one. The Vantage 2D view creates a scatter plot. It lets you quickly display statistical relationships between two variables. So in this example, we see a clear relationship between speed and the position X with a reference frame which the user has placed. So the objects closer to the reference frame have a higher speed. The Vantage object view enables comparing and contrasting experimental groups by visualizing the image data, so segmented or the original one, in 5 dimensions, X, Y, Z, scale, color, as uni or multivariate scatter plots. So what does that mean? Well, you have your segmented object here, and Vantage will take those segmented objects out to create analytical plots. So on the right-hand side, you see some of those analytical plots as well, either for fixed data set or for time series. And you will see as well that there are box plots next to the frames. So a box plot is useful to understand actually the data. So it's a quick visual summary that easily handles extremely large amount of data and shows range, spread, and median value of the selected variable values. So the distance of the whiskers provide the distribution of the values. The space between the different parts of the box indicates the degree of distribution and skewness in the data. And the position of the median inside the box indicates whether there are more values towards the upper or lower quartile, Q1, Q3. So one of the most important benefits of box plots is the possibility to compare more than one data set. So multiple box plots are drawn side by side, providing an efficient method to examine value distributions and highlight differences in variability between several data sets. The color of the box plot is the same as the surpass object. Now if you have time series, you can get a time plot. So the box plot here represents a moving statistical summary. So that means that the box plot position and shape changes at each time point. So here I have actually a snapshot of a single time instance, and the box plot reflects exactly the statistics or the statistical summary of that time point. Now in the background you have actually the summary of the whole time series. So the bright line is the median, the dimmer is the first and third quartile, and the even dimmer is the spread of the data, so the min and the max. So the summary projection plots are especially useful for multiple data sets. So like here, you can directly compare 2 data sets. You can easily compare how 2 or more variables change across time based on the line position and the size of the region. So the line position, the median, but also the spread of the regions. So as you can see here in the green, we have a much higher spread at the beginning in time point 4 or 5 versus the red objects here. So to create these different 2D or 3D scatter plots, you will be pointed in a wizard. Like all the other wizards we have in Imaris, Vantage has also its own wizard. So in the wizard, you will actually choose which plot type you want to have. So you can have 2D scatter plots like XY scale, or actually the third dimension, and you choose the different statistics for each of those dimensions. So that's it for now in the PowerPoint. Let's move on in Imaris to show you some examples for creating Vantage plots. So up front I will use datasets which come directly with Imaris in the Imaris demo image folder, so that you can replicate as well the Vantage plots which I am presenting you today. So I will start with the plant cell dataset. I created already surfaces on the chloroplasts, and they are labeled here or displayed in a object ID color mode. So if I'm interested in the sphericity of the chloroplasts, I can do this, of course, in the Statistics tab or in the Filter tab, but I can also do that in the Vantage menu. So as explained, there is a wizard when you start an object view Vantage plot. So I select the surface 1. On step 2, I can choose my plot type. So here I'm interested in the gallery. So if I click on gallery, you see directly that the objects were taken out of the XYZ context into now a gallery view. And since I'm interested in sphericity, I will choose that here in this menu. Now all the objects are directly sorted from the most spherical to the least spherical. Now I can add, of course, the color to it and choose the same statistical pattern. And at a glance, I can see here the spherical and the least spherical. But I also notice, well, this one is not segmented. So I can click on this one, go back to Surpass, find this object, and edit this object. So I will just cut this with our Cut Surface tool, and can go back to Vantage. Now the Vantage plot is immediately updated accordingly. So if there is another object, I can of course do the same procedure, which I will not do right now. So if I'm satisfied with this, I will finish the wizard. And here I do have different options now to display these objects. So either I can scale them up all at the same size, which is great for morphology patterns, for instance, to see differences in morphology. You can change the orientation of the objects as well. So you really can inspect nicely the morphology. Now if you want another pattern or another scatter plot, you can go back here to the creation wizard, select the plot setup, and for instance go in the scatter plot. Now again I can choose the sphericity and maybe, I don't know, the intensity mean of the channel 2. And as you can see, the objects are directly displayed according to their individual statistical values. Now you can add, of course, a third dimension. And here, for instance, if I use the bounding box object-oriented, the objects are oriented. So all that can be displayed directly here in this graph. Okay, so let me go back here to Arena to show you that maybe on another data set. Here is dendrite with spines, And again, if I want to do a gallery view, I can do that. So here we have now the filament in the wizard. And here I want to display now just my dendrites according, for instance, the straightness. Okay, so I will have the least straight up here, and then of course the soma up here. Of course, you can change that pattern just clicking on this sorting, ascending and descending. Now again, you can inspect, as I just explained you that before, with the chloroplasts. You can inspect that individually. But one thing which you can do in the plot setup, especially here with filaments, is the type. So here we have spines. So if you are interested in categorizing spine morphology, you can do that as well. And here if I choose, for instance, the spine volume, you can get immediately here a nice gallery view of the different spines, and yeah, put here in area, but you can also do here, for instance, the volume. So we have it all aligned. So the volume here, sorry, and the table here. Smallest volume being in blue, largest volume being in red. So that's actually a pretty nice feature which is in the object view. And again, if you want to know where this spine is, you can click on it, go back to Surpass and have a look at it where that is. Okay. So I use the same pyramidal cell for now another type, or creating another type of Vantage plot. So instead of creating the dendrites, as I showed before, I plotted spots along the dendrites, and I put a reference frame here on this in the soma. And I characterized, or I classified these spots according to their distance away from the reference frame. And to be simple, I used 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 micron distance. So these are all now listed in different colors, displayed in different colors. And let's go now into Vantage 1D. So now we have here displayed the distance from the origin reference frame. So each class is now listed accordingly. Let me put here maybe this in a color print. But again, it might be interesting to get the intensity measurements. And here you will see that in the soma we will have, of course, bright spots, and towards the end of the dendrites the intensity actually significantly dropped, pretty much by half. So that is something you can get directly here in the 1D view. You will find the statistical tests down here, and as I explained in my PowerPoint, the tests are always compared to the first one in the ranking here. So to change the sequence of the plot, you can use here the arrows. As you can see here, this is directly now updated also in the bottom. So that is really a nice interactivity within these plots, and then of course your statistical tests, which can be, by the way, exported directly into Excel. And the graph can be saved as a snapshot. Now let's go on the 2D view, where you will have two statistical values displayed. Here I already did this, distance from the origin of the reference frame and the distance to the image border in XY. So it shows you just that, well, in some categories here, well, some spots are closer to the border and further away, especially here in the middle, which is again visible if we look up here in my image, that the green and the red and the blue actually are spread more in the middle, while the soma and actually the other bluish here at the end of the dendrite is more towards the border. And this is nicely visible within the 2D graph, for instance here. We'll have here the summary, you will have here the details, everything exportable into Excel. Okay. So let me now show you if you're doing actually object creations in a batch mode on, let's say, data set in the control and treatment. So I did already know a batch on surfaces. So I did actually Gauss filter and then some surfaces on the green channel for the control and the treatment. And I would like to compare both series in a Vantage plot. I have to select the folders and click here on New Plot. Now let's go eventually directly in, starting with the object view. Okay, so I would like to have a scatter plot . Maybe a 2D scatter plot is sufficient for the intensities. So the intensity mean of the first channel and the intensity mean of the second channel. And here I can add the box plots, so which gives you directly a nice indication of the population and the differences or similarities in various cases. Here we see, of course, an expression of the protein varies between the control, which is here in blue, versus the treatment in brown. Of course, I can add a third dimension here as well. For instance, to see if my intensity, of course, they were separate, but if the morphology might have changed for the nuclei. So here, for instance, sphericity. And here I can see actually that those two kind of overlap. Of course, there is an outliner here for the blue, but overall this is more close, so the morphology itself did not really change, while the intensities did change. Now you can go back, of course you can finish here, you can go back now in the 1D view to get the statistical tests for it. So here you have, of course, only the choice for choosing one of the intensity values. Okay, so here for the channel 1, and here you will see that this is the control, the treatment. And here you will have the statistical test. Now they might not be working on here, but again, it will be displayed immediately down here in the tab. Same, you can do it for the second, and you see directly the difference. Now on the 2D view, you can do the same, you can use here the intensity mean 1, intensity mean channel 2. Okay, and I can change the color. So as you recall, first one was blue, the treatment was brownish, and I can display that immediately here as well in the 2D scatter plot. So here you will see it's only dots, so it's not object view, so here you only have the dots, and therefore we can display a lot of objects in the 1D and 2D view. Okay, so it's really here compare data sets, so you have different setup of data sets, so results in one population against a second population. Okay. Here we did not have any label, but if you would have labels within a population, they would show up here. Now my last example will be a time lapse. And here I open actually the swimming algae had been tracked. If I go now to Vantage, of course I would like to go to object view and display the tracks. Now here by default you have the tracks and the time plot is now unavailable. Now you have to switch to the spot to get the time plot available. Okay. Of course you will see now directly all the tracks. If I don't want to see all the tracks, I turn them off. And here you see actually the box plot appearing and the pattern besides it. So I want to measure, for instance, the speed variation. And if I play here the time series, you will see that the box plots vary along the time. So now I freezed it, and again the box plot is freezed on time point 30. So it will directly display just that pattern there. And again, the color would have been green, so I can change that. You will see again in the middle is the median. You will have the first and the third quartile, and you have the min and the max. Okay, so of course you can do another type of plot. You can do a 3D scatter plot. Again, I can use, for instance, the intensity variations. And if you don't want to see the spots, you can turn them off and only have here, for instance, the two summaries of both statistics, so that you can see, well, the speed is pretty much flat, but also so is the intensity. Okay. Again, if you have a population of data sets like what I showed you before, you can compare those. You will have two box plots to compare. The results will be again exportable here into Excel. Everything is there which matches the plot you see. Okay, so that's actually all for what I wanted to show you on the different views, the 1D view, 2D view, and the object view. I would like to use this data set here to show you the annotation tool, which is also part of Vantage. So you might have seen on our website that we added some statistical values to some segmented objects. Well, this is actually possible when you go in the Statistics tab. For instance, you want to display the speed of this object. You have here the little tag. You click on the annotation and the speed will be directly displayed here. Now the annotation menu opened, and you will see here that there is a figure with the tracked object which appears. If I play now along the time, you will see that the speed will be displayed alongside. You can add, of course, a second statistic value to this object, and it will be directly displayed as well. Here, for instance, the intensity. Okay, so you also can put that as a box. So if you want to add this with a box, you can add a text box to it, and the text box will appear directly here. Now this will move, well, the arrow will move alongside as well with the object. Okay, so I just wanted to end on this because it allows you really to add as well some statistical values to it, but the annotation tool is also meant to add just text. I will show you that eventually here. It's only 3 clicks, so 1, okay, add annotation. I need to add an annotation. 1, 2, 3 clicks, you get a box, but this box will be static. Okay, so it will not move, it will be just fixed to the object. So if I'm zooming out, of course it will always be fixed or pointed to that track. And then I can add, for instance, here some text. And it will directly appear here. Okay, so I just want to close then this webinar on this note. I think we do have time now for some questions.
So one of the questions, I was watching the questions as they were coming in, and one of the questions that popped up a few times was really that people wanted to make sure that you can make plots across multiple data sets. And I know, Daniel, you talked about that in the presentation. I don't know if there's anything, since you were looking at some of the questions too, if there was anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, so comparing actually the data sets, so I used in my presentation actually the ones I had previously batched, but they don't need to be batched. You can just have actually here a folder with your segmented objects. It can be spots, surfaces in this case, filaments, or even the cells, cell compounds. So they need to be the different folders, and you just select actually the folders and do the new plot here. So it's really very easy whenever you have a population of segmented objects. Just bear in mind, put them in a folder, and then you can do the plot directly from here to compare these data sets.
Yep. Thank you for making that clarification about it doesn't have to be batched for you to do that. Okay, so then one of the other things that, let's see, sorry, I'm trying to scroll through and get to that. One of the other things people were asking about was just the aesthetics or the presentation of the plot, and if there are ways that you can adjust that. And so there are some ways, not everything is adjustable, but yeah, maybe you can go in and point people in the right direction about where they can find some of those tools.
Yes, so if I just start here, for instance, on 1D or 2D, you have, of course, here on the left-hand side, by default, this overlay with your own background. So I have actually here a gradient background, but this you can change, of course, in your preferences. If you want a color print, smooth lines, so all the lines will be pretty smooth, and you will have here a white background. Now you can, of course, go here in in changing actually the box, the grid, the spacing, and even here the axis color and the font. So if you want a larger font, of course this will be now be invisible or not readable, but all this here is possible in here.
Yeah.
Cannot be seen. But same if we go here in the object view, you will have the possibilities always here to add color, the font, the tick marks. So everything can be adapted here accordingly. So here also we're shading shadow. Of course, this might not make any sense on this data set, but that's actually also in this Vantage view. And maybe, yeah, I might eventually say that as well. You can change also the position where actually your plot will start. So normally it will start on the 0, but you can also do some offsetting if you want to do some offsetting. So again, it's doable.
Yes, there's lots. Yeah, sorry.
Lots of possibilities.
There are lots of possibilities. And so taking a few minutes and figuring out the things that matter most to you is important. Daniel's gone through and given you a highlight of those, but I do recommend if you're interested in making this perfect for yourself, that you take some time to play around with it and see what it looks like with your own data, because that matters the most, right? And then we are still getting questions coming in about being able to pull, P-O-O-L, sorry, my Southern accent is coming out, but to pull data sets to then be able to have groups that you can then compare. So if you can, Daniel, can you go back? I'm gonna say it this time to see if that helps, because sometimes just hearing it from two different people. Yep, click on that folder, please.
Yes. So in this one.
So the first thing that you would really want to do as a user is to make sure that you have all of the images that you consider to be within the same group. So be that control versus treatment 1 versus treatment 2, that you get all those images for control into the same folder, and then all of the images for the treatment into a treatment folder, and to have those two folders sort of beside each other within the arena view. And once you have that, then you're able to do what Daniel just did, which is to click on both of those folders after the data's been analyzed, to click on both of those folders, and then to click on new plot. And then you'll be able to compare either two groups to one another or even more groups than that. So first set up where your images are to make sure that they're together within a folder, and then after that, it's pretty straightforward with that new plot button. But if I'm going to write you back in a second before we close the webinar, but if you still have questions, we can help you out with that too. I think we've covered almost everything. Thank you, Daniel, for giving Vantage its due and bringing a lot more eyes to it, hopefully. It's one of the more fun places within Imaris to look at your data and to get an idea of what's going on. So I hope that a lot more people are going to start using it now. If we haven't answered your questions so far, we'll get those over to the support team. I'm also going to sit here for a second and answer a couple of questions. And yeah, but we'll make sure to follow up. And thanks to everyone again for coming, and thanks to Daniel, and enjoy the rest of your week and take care.